Surely you've heard the news, said one of the librarians, visiting the scribe. Yes, of course, hasn't everyone? I'm in utter shock. I just don't know what to say, really. I'm empty for words. Well, that's a first for you, said the librarian. Just unprecedented, perhaps. Yes, isn't it? It just defies words, really. So much history, thousands of years of history, gone in an afternoon. Who could believe it? Well, not quite all history, of course. Fortunately, we were able to salvage something, but it's only a small remnant. Really very little compared to the whole of it. I've had scribes, normally so logical and rational, in tears this afternoon. Really, I've never seen anything like it. It's struggling myself to comprehend it all. Well, I'm sure the world's come through much worse and will carry on. Yes, but at what cost? I mean, ancient books with our real history. Hundreds of years of history accumulated, gathered all up into one place. The stories that bound people together through generations, passed on throughout centuries, millenniums, all across continents, centuries, unfathomable. We don't know, and we won't realise for a long time just quite what we've lost today. After all, we don't have any real knowledge of our true ancient origins, of history itself. Where are we? What kind of a people are we now? We don't know who we are. We don't know when we are. Well, that's assuming that we ever knew, said the scribe, turning to his books. I mean, there were as many good books as there were bad ones. I dare say that it's a blessing as well as a curse, perhaps. I mean, there were lots of false books in the library anyway, weren't there? And lots of fictions that people thought were facts. Is it really such a great loss? I mean, well, of course it is, said the librarian, outraged at the mere thought. At least we had a chance then to discern, to find out what was true and what's not. How are we supposed to know if we can't decide? We can't look at the facts and the fictions and compare them and to weigh up and to think what's rational, what's not, what's reasonable or not. How on earth are we to know now? Well, said the scribe, struggling for words, I'm sure that we haven't lost everything. I mean, I hear that there were some books that were salvaged, and there were some, fortuitously, that were made as copies. Fortunately, some of the scribes were already making records of some of the ancient books, so we haven't entirely lost them all. A mere remnant, said the librarian, turning angry again. That's not a representative sample, and you know it. No, what we've lost is unfathomable right now and cannot be got back. Now we don't know where we are, stranded in a time without time itself, without perception of it. It could be all too easy for anyone to conjure up some mythical history for us. Within a generation or two, who would know the difference? No, it was better to have the facts and the fictions, however many there were, than to have an emptiness that we have now. And your remnant is just a small sample. But a small sample is better than nothing, isn't it? Said the scribe. I mean, even if it is small, we still have a chance with that to try and discern something at least from it. No, there were some scribes that were already, like I said, copying out some of those ancient books with the foresight that something might happen to the library, I hear. So we do at least have some records. Now, they might not be totally right, but at least they give a general consensus of some of the more basic ideas, at least. You can't summarise the entirety of history, began the librarian, with just a few books. Not possible. There was a vast compendium because History is so long and so varied over so many different cultures and times. Impossible to give a brief, comprehensive guide of such things. Well, we need to work with what we've got, said the scribe. I'll make sure that I inform my contacts and try and locate and track down all the information that we do have about it. It's important to try and gather the information that we do have so that we can try and decipher what we've got missing and try to locate that from another source, potentially. Other source? Asked the librarian, perturbed. Well, yes, began the scribe. What I meant was, is that obviously some of the other scribes would have been more familiar with some of the books. After all, they were frequenting the library quite often due to their research purposes. So, of course, some of them might still have some of that information in their head. So we, have to try and get them to rewrite what they can remember, at least. Huh. You expect people to sort of have a total recall, do you? People don't have photographic memories, scolded the librarian. No, I'm not expecting infallible results or anything, but at least they might make a concerted attempt to try and remember something, at least the more important details, said the scribe. Yes, no doubt it's a worthy effort, and it's worthwhile trying at least. But you said that some of them, with foresight, had some decision to make such records. Are we able to track them down? I mean, do you know the whereabouts? Oh, I know some of them, began the scribe, but only a few. We need to put the word out, make sure we ask as many people as we can, and find out, who's got what records. But how will we know if they are accurate? Began the librarian. I mean, after all, we no longer have the original copies to compare them to. And you know how reliable some of the scribes are, no offence. But some of those translations were pretty shoddy at best. And I'm not saying that's on purpose, but there were a huge number of mistakes being made. And I know translation's quite a difficult discipline anyway. That's even with good intentions. But how are we going to know that any of those books are accurate if we don't have the original source in which to compare them to? I mean, we don't want to be misled because some scribes put the apostrophe in the wrong place. No, well, began the scribe. Well, we would just have to ascertain it using our own common sense. Oh, I'm not sure I would like to rely on that too much, scolded the librarian. No, well, granted that there are some mistakes, but if we look at the scribes' other records and look at what typical mistakes they've made, then we might be able to find out what mistakes they're likely to make in their other records they're making. If we get to know the scribe, for example, we might get to know what kind of typical mistakes are likely for them. You know what I'm saying? I understand your general thesis, but I still think it's fraught with problems. Nevertheless, in this current situation, I don't really see what else we can do. But yes, we'll track down what records we still can, and it's worthwhile trying to gather those that frequented the ancient history section of the library. I want to try and gather all those together that have any information that could be deemed valid. If we don't make the opportunity as soon as possible, then it's possible that their memories may play tricks on them if they haven't already. It's quite difficult to remember vast amounts of information, especially if you haven't got the records in which to rely upon. But granted that there are different scribes that have read the same books, so if we could compare what their different records of memory are, then we might be able to cross-reference those and compare their notes. And if we look for what's common about what the various scribes claim to remember about those records, then it's possible, through a process of deduction, we might still be able to record at least some of those books. Does that sound like a plan? It sounds possible, like it could have some results. Yes, it's worthwhile trying. Let's summon together as many of the scribes that we can and make sure that we try and gather them as soon as possible. I'm a bit concerned too that if too many of them are allowed to sort of wander off and we don't track them down for some years, that it could well be that their memories of recalling such things become more vague as time goes on. Right, well, you've got your scribes and contacts. Make sure you get the word out, and we'll reconvene a gathering as soon as possible. But yes, I'm trying to sort of gather my thoughts and reassure myself at least that all's not lost. But it's going to take a huge effort on the scribe's part to try and gather some sort of semblance of a remnant together out of the whole facade. Nevertheless, we need to make some endeavour to do it, or we could end up with entirely blank pages, if you know what I mean. Yes, of course, began the scribe. I will send letters out straight away, inviting them to a gathering ASAP. Should I tell them when or where? Have you already planned any particular conference? Obviously, we need a sort of location or something. Right, well, I was thinking that the solstice would probably be a good time. Obviously, that gives them sufficient notice to travel from wherever they are. Yes, maybe a solstice, and maybe if we have a number of different gatherings on a number of different occasions, that will give the vast amount of different scribes ample opportunity to make it. I know how difficult it is to fit within your own agenda, and people have lots of different appointments already. But if we don't make this a priority, then I'm not sure what is, to be honest with you. Because, as you should know too well, the importance of having some sort of semblance of our history. We don't know where we've come from, we won't know where we're going. Yes, I see what you're saying, said the scribe. I will certainly send out the letters. As soon as you let me know what are the times and dates for those gatherings, then I'll send them out straight away. Good, said the librarian, feeling that at least something had been achieved. I know it's just awful, just terrible. There aren't the words, like you said, fitting for the occasion. It's just one of those tragic accidents that happen, though. Obviously, some people had foresight that tragic events can happen, but we had no real idea that it would happen on such an occasion. Well, there are no such occasions, precedented, of course. Is it an accident? Asked the scribe, not wanting to ask. Well, of course it is. A tragic accident at that. That's what everybody knows. Whoa, there are rumours, began the scribe, that I didn't like to say, but some people suggest maybe it's not, but I don't know. Well, there's no good putting theories like that around. That'll do no one any good. No, we need to assume that it may well be a simple case of accident. Books are prone to fire, of course, and it's just such a terrible shame that they weren't able to put it out before so much was ravaged, but nevertheless, we are where we are. Thank goodness some of those books were put into private collections, though. That was a fortuitous insight. Yes, answered the scribe, but we don't know quite how many are in what private collections, do we? And it may be difficult to track them down. Nevertheless, I do have numbers of some collectors, and I will be in contact with them just to ask if they do have any copies of some of the books, at least. Well, it can do no harm in asking, summarised the librarian, making room to leave. Send those letters off. I'll think of suitable locations and times and let you know as soon as I can. And you can fill in the gaps in your letters once I've come up with details. Right you are then, said the scribe. And may the peace be with you and all that. Yes, right, I'll be making tracks then, said the librarian, about to leave.